anything you say can and may be used against you. No, just joking. So the event will be recorded, so you don't have to take obsessive compulsive notes unless that helps with your cognition. So I've asked Saradwan to join us in the hot seat, not just because she's at a university. The fact is, in an online mode like this, it makes location redundant. But the last 2 universities that I've worked with, they didn't have an instructional designer working in the way I've seen Saradwan working. And the last organisation that I worked for, it didn't have one either, even though it was very much in the business of the design and the delivery of professional learning for leaders in hybrid and completely online modes. When I took on the job in that last organisation, the first thing I did was to employ somebody just like Saradwan, that name. Now, I'm not going to lie and say the last few weeks have been seamless for me. With the course, I've been building the plane while flying it, and unfortunately flying the plane too, with 4 countries in 2 weeks. If you've encountered some disruptions, I apologise, but I hope they also create useful markers for you when you're leading the design and the delivery of learning in a hybrid mode or a wholly online mode. Hopefully you're also picking up some tips and some strategies of what not to do and what questions to ask about platforms and about things that are important and useful for an end user. So I certainly appreciate your commentary through email and the Canvas mail saying this could be better. So I invite that. The other reason, obviously, for this chat is to intentionally position synchronous digital engagement within this learning environment so that we have this lovely blend of asynchronous and also synchronous coming together. And, you know, there can be something alive and relational within a digital environment. There can also be something flat and uninspiring. So that's there to critique. So I've read through your questions that you've posted on the Titan Pad, and what I've done is I've re-storied them, drawing together the themes, and I'm going to essentially work through those with you, Saradwan. These seem to be the big themes, and then I'll ask you a question to get started. The big themes seem to be change management, the drivers, the motivators, stakeholder engagement, successes. Another theme seemed to be around relationships. How do we humanise in online course design? How do we build relationships with stakeholders within an institution to engage them in moving to a more digital mode, if that's appropriate? There was certainly a theme coming through about best practice and approach. So what is best, what is better? What are Saradwan's fundamental design principles that she anchors her work with? And there was certainly a theme running through around professional learning. You know, how does a person stay up to date, both as a leader and as a designer? So, Saradwan, I thought we'd get started with, I think probably one of the first big questions people want to know really is a little bit about you. So if you could start with an introduction, your background, and maybe provide us a bit of a sense of across a week, what might your role look like? So introductions and background, Saradwan.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay? Great. So my background actually is in design, visual arts, and library science, which I actually don't have an instructional design degree, which sometimes surprises people, but it's a pretty new degree. So yeah, that's my background. In a general week, I will mostly work with faculty like Mark, designing and building their courses before they launch, and then also answering questions as they go along in the course if they want to know things about pedagogy or design or XYZ is not working. What's another approach we could do? I do a lot of that. I also work a lot on I guess guides and little articles and things that I can put out that other faculty can use and reuse, so that we're not always like remaking the same Canvas pieces like over and over again, like how to make a video assignment, how to make a video presentation, and those different parts that can be plugged into different courses or customized for different things. Also in a week, I will review courses and look through things and make suggestions for edits of what could be improved and what looks awesome. Yeah, it's a lot of coordination and a lot of communication and a lot of building relationships with people.
Nice. Thanks, Saradhan. I've popped up the next juicy question for you. I mean, the bit that I got from there was really around you're certainly engaged in the work of building assets that people can use, which are going to help them overcome any technical challenges to reduce the friction when engaging with technology. So you're building those. The other useful thing is an instructional designer like those I've employed in the past have the lovely helicopter view across multiple courses being delivered by multiple faculty. So you have a chance to pick up the best practice across many. That would be accurate to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I steal a lot from whenever I see good stuff. I ask people if I can use it in different places, but a lot of it's like teaching. If you see something you like, you should incorporate that into your teaching style. And I guess maybe coming from a library background and information wants to be free kind of position, where I think there's a lot of information out there and it might as well be shared.
Yeah, I like that. Take from one person is stealing, or take from many it's research. So a good strategy. Saradhan, one of the themes that came through from people's questions was very much about this moving online in terms of online learning design. And certainly we're doing that within the Canvas environment. For some of us, clearly they're old hands. For others, this is a very new, brave world. So I guess this next sort of piece of information we want to understand is, what are the considerations people need to give when they're thinking of moving a coursework piece or some content or some skill development? They're going to move it into an online mode. These folk in our room will be directing other teachers who are engaged in course design. They'll be designing coursework themselves, possibly as professional learning for faculty. They'll be leading. They'll be the people that other people will go to say, hey, the aeronautics course, I'm thinking of offering it in a wholly online mode starting next year. So my question for you, Saradhan, from your perspective, just what are some of the key considerations when people are shifting to an online mode?
Yeah, so my main design approach that I use, I strive to start with the goals of the course, start with what do we want people to be able to do, what do we want them to know, what do we want them to be able to problem solve through. I start with that and then I work backwards. I believe there's a famous set of books called Backward Design that are all about this, but it's basically just starting from what you want people to accomplish and then thinking through what are activities or things that they can build that show that they know how to do that, and how can you guide them through those actions and that research to be able to get to the point where they can accomplish the assignment and thus like learn what you want them to learn. So that's a main thing. I also come from a design background, like I said. So I think a lot about the user experience. And so I do a lot of asking people lots of questions about the content and about like the context of the content. Because really often in a class, people will be like, oh, I just want to teach them this. But they're sometimes faculty, because they know it so well, they miss something that a novice needs to know, and they forget what it's like to be a novice. And And so I like to ask them a lot of contextual questions around the information that they're trying to convey. And then also, if I get a chance to talk to students or other people who've gone through learning that type of material, ask them what worked, what didn't work, and I guess questions around like their experience as well as from the teaching perspective.
Let's ask about the what doesn't work, because sometimes to illuminate a point, it's really useful to look at, you know, the extreme case where something hasn't occurred. So without naming names, just could you share with us just what are some beginner mistakes that people would make in moving a learning program into a wholly online mode? What are some of those common mistakes that are made?
I think definitely ones that I've seen is forgetting who your audience is can be a big one. Who are your students? I worked with, this was at another university, so I still am not naming names, but I worked with a faculty that they had it was a critical thinking course, and a lot of the students that were in the course were English was their second language. They were at varying degrees, and one of the assignments was to watch, I don't remember if it was Much Ado About Nothing, or it was a Shakespearean play made into a movie. And the plot lines had a lot to do with assumptions and confusion because people were making assumptions. And so it was supposed to illustrate that point. But a lot of English speakers can't even understand Shakespeare. So extra didn't make sense to have people who might be an intermediate English speaker, like trying to watch this and understand what on earth is going on. So, and that leads to a lot of like frustration if a student doesn't understand, like it takes away from the learning, really. Going on a little bit about that one particular case, but yeah, that's an instance where they were forgetting who their audience were. Another situation might be where someone wants to hold like live sessions. It's an online course, but they want to do it at like 3:00 on a weekday. Most people taking an online course are going to be working in the workforce, and they're going to need to take a night class. And during the day, like they might be at work and not be able to attend like a live meeting. So I think that's a one of the major things I see. From going into that a little bit more from a design perspective, it's really easy to understand like your feelings about something, and that happens with teachers a lot also. Like they know how they learn, they know how to understand the information, so we want to explain it in that way, and that doesn't work for everyone. Another mistake that I see and trying to get away from is starting with the what is cool thing. I really just think it's cool. And really what you want to do is you want to think about what are your goals, what are your outcomes, and is this actually something that's going to support learning, or is it just something I want to use because I like it? The tools have to be secondary. They have to support the learning as opposed to just being there. And I mean, you could have an assignment where you want someone to use a tool because it's something they're going to use later on in their career or something, and then the purpose is to learn the tool. But that's a side thing.
Okay, I've just turned off my video for a moment because I think everybody's using the SeaTac Airport wireless at the moment, so I want to be conscious of that. Thanks for that, Sirwan. I've got another question for you. Let's say that Barb is she's a new director of instructional leadership at Seattle University, and Barb has been teaching in a great way. That the organisation has moved to a much more blended hybrid model. So, you know, what you want to do is you want to sort of influence her yourself. I mean, you know, Barb is both the leader and the learner. You want to support her to explore potentially some new ways to, you know, collaborate or to provide more inclusive activities with an online course. how do you find it works best when you're trying to provide support and advice to people like who are in this room who have got content that they wish to teach, they've come to you or you've gone to them? How do you suggest that? What works well to influence people from your perspective?
Yeah, it's really, people can be so different in not just in personalities and how they interact with each other, but also in depending on your relationship with that person. Like, I'm going to have a different relationship because I'm an outside staff member. I'm not a fellow faculty. I'm not their boss. And so I consider what my relationship is to them, and I don't really actually have any control over what they do in their course. So I keep that in mind and don't necessarily just tell people what to do. I like to try and develop a relationship first, ask them what they want, what's worked in the course in the past, and kind of start there as a conversation between the two of us, because it's something that we're building together. It's not something that I'm just telling her she has to do X, Y, Z, and then it'll be a good online course. So I really look at the relationship between us, try and build that, and then try and match the person in the kind of way that they like to communicate. If it's someone who's really research-based, then I'm always pulling out reports, and I'm like, research shows that building community in an online course increases engagement, and that in turn increases learning. And then I'm not just saying, oh, community in your class is great, you should do it. I point at the research. But if someone's more influenced by like social examples, then I use examples from my own life that I've seen or I have heard about or read about. So I usually try and back it up, and I always like to focus really on what they want to do so that they see me as a support to get them where they want to go, and not someone from the outside who's just telling them what to do.
I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the question, and I've popped into the text chat box, everyone, just the link to the TitanPad 2, so we've got that sort of. And the reason I've done that is because that's part of my question. So in an online course, I mean, we're preparing people to make a life and be happy. We're introducing them to a range of ways of thinking, knowing, being, and tools that they could potentially use, particularly in this topic. These people will lead the instructional designers in organisations with higher education and post-secondary age students. And they're not always going to be using Canvas. They might be entering a workplace that's using Moodle, Mahara, Schoology, any one of 1,000 blends of learner management systems. They might find themselves in Google land with Google Docs and Google Drives, or they'll be in Office 365 land with OneDrive and Shared Docs. I mean, there's a lot of things there, and I've been introducing tools like my favourites, like TitanPad, because it's quick and easy, works everywhere for collaboration. But it feels like there's this tension, too many tools, or just using Canvas, if you like, the learner management as the only tool, maybe doesn't set people up to be aware that there's a range of different ways and different things to use. So, what are your thoughts on, when does technology get in the way, and when does technology, enable the learning to flourish?
It definitely is a tension, as you put it. I think considering who your students are, I have some courses where some of the people in the course are completely technologically advanced, and I can throw lots of things at them and they'll just like be fine with that, and they can learn it quickly, or they have previous experience with it. And then there are other people in the class that take a long time to learn, are really uncomfortable if anything goes wrong, and need a lot of hand-holding. And in an online course, you can't always be technical support. You are partially technical support because you're the main point of contact. But you can't do everything for someone also. I think so you have to consider the level, and you have to build in time for people to learn the tool. I always like to have like a practice assignment that's low stakes, So there's going to be less anxiety and less worry about trying to complete a big project in a new tool that I have no experience with, because very often students leave it to the end. And graduate students are especially good at that. And I know from being a graduate student at one point, like that's just what you do, because you have time is a very limited resource. And so take that into consideration. Have something in the beginning of the course that's really easy, low stakes, like, okay, we're all going to meet in Zoom, and everyone's going to say hi and introduce themselves and tell us something surprising about themselves. And so you have them do something that also can work towards something else, but isn't high stakes. This also works really well for breaking assignments into chunks. If you want people to be working on a project and they can't leave it to the last minute, you can build it out so that they're doing it in increments, so that hopefully they learn the process of doing this kind of project. And you can have one of the early assignments use one of these tools you want them to use, and do it in such a way that they're just doing something that they have to have later on. And it's great. It's something that they don't have to worry about later. I have this one faculty, she did something really wonderful. She wanted her class to use VoiceThread. So early on, she had them create a VoiceThread account. And then in another assignment, she had them create all the pages that they were going to put content for their final presentation on. So they were just building the structure that they were going to input all this information into. So they didn't have to worry about that at the end. They could just, do the important stuff, and they already are comfortable with the tool. So I think definitely you need to consider how long it takes someone to learn something, even if it's a quick, easy tool, and give them support, let them know where they can find help if you can't be immediately available. I always put the information for the company's support information like right there, or if the university has like a good IT department, I always put that right up front so that they have 24 access to help that I can't provide, because I'm not here 24 hours a day. So yeah, considering who your people are, building in time to learn it. And it's always good to check in with people too. Like, am I throwing too much at you, or is this a piece of cake? And you all are familiar with Google Docs and Google Hangouts, so like that didn't take any time.
Yeah, indeed. So I mean, that's where you could use, a poll anywhere or a tool like that. While you grab a sip of water, if people in the group have got some tools that they think are fantastic and that they've been using in other courses or within their working environments that are super for learning, for collaboration, feel free to pop those in the text chat box. Where I've been over the last week, between Mexico and UK, the conversation about the thoughtful use of digital in learning K-12 and post-compulsory has been the trending hot topic, especially in lots of emerging markets in Colombia and in sub-Saharan Africa, around building adult literacy skills. So there's been this interesting conversation around choosing and using the tools which allow people to come together, that allow people to dialogue, that capture and create digital artifacts that can be used over and over again. Lots of conversation about using online tools which are low friction, like this one. This feels very human. That's why I love Zoom. It feels like a conversation, but it's being recorded. It's creating a digital artifact. The text, if anybody was typing in there, could be Control-A highlighted, Control-C copied and dropped into Wordle. And I've seen people using that to analyse meta-language, the thinking about thinking language people engage in online spaces. So thanks for those bits of advice. I think one of the things that I've learned, certainly from Saradwin, and I stumble over your name because I've been flying for a long time and my lips are numb. It's the free wine. One of the things I learned from you in moving into a wholly online environment that I'll take as an instructional leader to my people that I work with over the years is the importance, and you've touched on it, the importance of shadowing skill development. So the advice that I've picked up from you is when you're very used to working face to face, because we all in various forms are engaged in training or teaching or adult learning in face to face, you can tend to build in impromptu learning. You can package and scaffold instantly. You can look somebody in the eye and know that they're anxious, and you can make an accommodation on the fly. In an online environment, you don't have that privilege of reading the humanity involved in the learning. So what you need to do, and what you've touched on, is to foreshadow new skills, foreshadow new content. When you're designing, you talk about backwards by design. You essentially are sort of looping back in time. If we know this is happening in Module 7, then we'll position in Module 5 the tool. We'll position in Module 2 the thinking or the research. So I think that's something interesting that I've been watching you do to me as you've helped craft the topic. That was just me being a polite host and giving you a breather just then. The next big question, we're running perfectly on time, everyone. I know you have busy lives. That's why this event's being recorded, because I recognise people have multiple conflicting demands. And I see Barb's just typed in and shared the tool Padlet, which is a corker, into the text chat box. We appreciate that. A question that came through Saradwin was really around assessment. And I know this is a big one for you. There's both that formative assessment that is informing people's learning as it's going along, assessment as learning. And then we've got our assessment of learning, those formal pieces. And in the online environment, this plays out with a different kind of nuance to in face-to-face. So I wondered whether you just wanted to talk to us about those different tools that are used to collect information. There's discussion boards, there's different sorts of assignments that can be built in, and some of the bits of advice that you would like to hammer home about those formal assignments. And I think you've touched on some of the bits of the answers, because one of them you've said is if you've got a high stakes activity, a major assignment piece, you've said that you would break that up into consumable chunks, and you would probably set key dates around those, correct?
Yeah, that's really helpful, because I think part of why I use that so much, this came from my own education around writing. All through elementary school and high school, no one really taught me how to write. And so I was kind of a terrible writer until halfway through college, when someone finally sat me down and helped me work through it. And I think part of that was the way the assignments were set up. You were just supposed to write something. You turn in your report at this time. And there was no built-in area for editing, for forming your ideas. I think mostly around editing, though, because writing is supposed to be a process. You do your outline, and you structure your sentences in a certain way. And I'd been told all these things, but no one had marched me through it and made me do those steps. Because if you could just bust out a report and it's kind of terrible, but you still get a C on it and you pass, you're never going to go back to that paper again and rewrite it. But if someone, shows you the process through the assignment, I think that's a lot more way to kind of force someone to, well, not force them, but, well, yeah, you're forcing them, but you're showing them the process as well as what the product is. You want them to get to a product, but it takes more than just saying oh, this is what it looks like, this is what it should be. So I guess I kind of lost a little bit of your, that's one of my favorite things to do, is build in the process. But we're talking about formative assessment. I think there are ways to, formative assessment is very important in online learning, because there isn't that personal aspect of right here and right now. And I think it can really help to bring people's attention in a lot more and kind of keep them on their toes if, say, you have a lesson built as a quiz. And so partway through, like, they're asked questions and the information's right there. They can go back and look. And you're highlighting that information for them. Like, here, I want you to know all this, but really, like, this is the main thing that I need you to know. And, like, can you repeat that back to me right now? And, like, yeah, it's just kind of like a little open book, whatever. But that person's much more likely to remember that information because they had to go back and search for it and they just read it right then. There's like that memory bell curve of how people remember things. If you give them a list of like 10 items or more, like, they're going to remember some of the first things you had them remember, not a lot like in the middle, and then like the last things that you ask them to try and memorize. Like, that list is going to be weighted in that way, and so you're kind of capitalizing off the way memory works.
Thanks for that. That certainly touched on both of those elements. Certainly the formative piece, those snack-sized bites, which are keeping people focused. It's keeping them on time. It's also providing them with a sense of progression, and it's an opportunity for the person who is the lecturer, the instructor, to also engage with Tennille or with Sally or with Laurel through commentary that I might be putting in the Google Docs. And some of it's fantastic because it's an invitation for a conversation, and some people have typed some really challenging things. Some of it's made me stop and go, that's good. I'm going to need to think about that, or I'm not too sure about this. And I've sat there and gone through, sort of my own research and done some rethinking. So the formative assessment certainly provides, if you like, the bridge between the learner and the instructor, and it provides a context for a relationship to exist. Whereas the summative pieces are certainly there as we know in the university system, very formal markers of attainment. And again, the tension point is the delicate balance between the two. Not wanting people to be fatigued by activities, those activities needing to be purposeful and leading somewhere and going somewhere, and not just there for the sake of being there. And that's one of those tensions that gets played out within the course design.
I think context is when you said that, I was just it just bumped some memories that context is just really huge in memory and in learning, and formative assessment gives people context. And I think it's just really important to give people context of this is why we're learning this. It's important because of X, Y, Z. And then people might care a little more because they're like, oh, this will be useful to me later. And then, context is super important for lots and lots of reasons.